lot of people are concerned about this topic right now. August historically can get a little distorted and weird. One of the biggest unlocks here that a large portion of the market doesn't understand is the monumental size and scale of these new preferred equity instruments. That whole equation has fundamentally changed. And now, whenever they want to raise debt capital, they can issue debt capital. They're sitting on so much money. People can't conceptualize like $66 billion of net capital. That is incredibly strong. And that number is going higher and higher as Bitcoin gets higher.
Bitcoin is up this month, and it's knocking at the door of new all-time highs yet again. So why is MicroStrategy down 11% for the month right now? Is the correlation with Bitcoin breaking, as many panicked tweets have been stating, or is there something bigger at play? They did just smash their quarterly earnings, posting billions in unrealized gains from their Bitcoin stack, yet the stock's been sliding a little bit. So does this call into question the whole idea of public companies doubling as Bitcoin treasuries? Is the market starting to lose interest or see cracks in the strategy? Or are we just zoomed in on too short of a time period and short-term noise? I've seen a couple of tweets, as always, when the prices seem to diverge. There's all this speculation. Is it over? Are we done? Is the whole strategy playbook played out? Jeff, you look unconcerned, but I did want to just quickly kind of tee you up. And I think it segues nicely into your reason for being bullish today. So just really quick, I'm just going to pull up the strategy page here, and I'll put us off to the side so we can be pretty together. But yeah, so I mean, we're looking at, MicroStrategy's at 389, almost 390. It's the MNAV is continuing to go down a little bit. So it's down about 3%. And there's all these people that are, oftentimes Bitcoin's at all-time high and MSTR is trading under 400. Is the strategy flywheel broken, or is the most hated rally of all time coming? And then we have here MSTR halting the equity ATM was a mistake, while only peanuts are coming in from other prefs. BTC yield is on pause, weakening the justification for an MNAV premium. So I'm going to stop chatting about something I'm not super qualified to talk about, and I'm going to defer to Jeff here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back. I love this show. And, it's a good question. And a lot of people are concerned about this topic right now. They're looking at Bitcoin trading near all-time highs, and they're seeing MSTR struggle on a relative performance basis, which I think is a fair question if you haven't been following this space for a really long time. I think that the simplest and easiest answer is that these are two fundamentally different things. Bitcoin is a commodity, and MSTR strategy is an equity. And the reason I'm not concerned at all is because if you just zoom out and you just take a look at the balance sheet strength and you look at strategy in general, they've got $77 billion of capital. And that number, as Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs, that number is getting larger and larger and larger. And the relative leverage that they have in the balance sheet is getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. So that is providing capacity to grow their leverage sustainably and safely into the future. Now, one of the biggest unlocks here that a large portion of the market doesn't understand, doesn't get, they're not behind the curtain, is the monumental size and scale of these new preferred equity instruments that have been released in the last 6 months. So they've issued 4 new equity instruments, which are effectively debt-like instruments that operate as equity. They do not have a debt maturity, so they are significantly better than the convertible debt that they've issued in the past. One of the biggest unlocks here in this entire thing is that they have shelf ATM registrations on each one of these new perpetual preferred equities. So that means they can raise debt capital at the click of a button and probably a phone call to their bankers, which is huge, right? And a lot of people don't recognize this. When they wanted to go raise convertible debt in the past, they would have to go out to the market, and they'd have to go out to the market and put a presentation together. Here's this presentation. Here's how much capital we got to raise. And then they need to go negotiate terms. The market would come back with the terms that they wanted. MSTR would try to negotiate those. There would be negotiations on the interest rates. The whole thing had to get negotiated. And it was a big, long process. And it got faster and faster as they got more efficient operating that capital market. But now that whole equation has fundamentally changed. And now they can, whenever they want to raise debt capital, they can issue debt capital. And that is an enormous unlock here. Additionally, that debt capital doesn't have a maturity, whereas historically, the convertible debts that they raised on their balance sheet had a maturity. There was a point in time where they did either have to refinance, pay the capital back, or convert it into equity. And now these new instruments, there is no debt maturity, and only one of the instruments is convertible into equity. So it's a much more efficient form of leverage to take on their balance sheet. And they have the ability to leverage their balance sheet a little bit higher than they would historically because the characteristics of the debt are different. So like for me, when I'm looking at the stock performance, I'm not concerned about this whatsoever for multiple reasons. One, because I believe in Bitcoin and I've got Bitcoin as a core holding. Two, because I see MSTR as an equity subject to different market factors at different points in time. For example, we are at August 13th. August is historically the lowest volume month for equities across all indices and all like NASDAQ and NYSE and all of those things. So all of the money managers are out at the lake, they're riding their boats, they're out at the Hamptons, and there's just not a lot of attention on equity markets. So August historically can get a little distorted and weird. So I'm bullish because they're sitting on so much money. People can't conceptualize, like they have $66 billion of net capital on their balance sheet. That is incredibly strong. And that number is going higher and higher as Bitcoin gets higher. So that improves the credit quality of the debt that they're issuing into the market. And the proof of concept here is you've got other companies that are coming in that are copying and emulating what Strategy is doing. And that will help with the future credit ratings of these instruments and the market to start conceptualizing this transformation of risk into the digital realm beyond what they're used to in the physical realm.
You opted out of the broken financial system by adopting Bitcoin and taking self-custody of your money. But protecting your wealth is only part of the equation. Now it's time to protect your freedom. My family is stacking sats and stacking flags. A second passport is our hedge against government overreach and uncertainty. If you're a Bitcoiner looking for your exit strategy, our friends at Citizen X will help you secure second citizenship through investment or descent. Book your free call today by hitting the link in the show notes or simply scanning the QR code on the screen. Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FITSCRIPT. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan, nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FITSCRIPT and see what's possible. Now, I've got a question for you, and I actually asked this of Saylor recently. He came on, and I was asking in around, and forgive my ignorance around this, but I figured it'd be a good chance for on this show.
No dumb questions. No dumb questions.
Yeah, and so the question that a lot of people often have is, what prevents this from being like an over-levered play? And he was saying that people will use the example, oh, well, what if a company is not making any money, they go out and they get a bunch of debt and then they finance it to buy Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin goes the wrong direction on them, and then they have to sell at a bad time. And his, when he was talking about it, well, you can't get the kind of leverage, I think yeah. So why is that? Can you explain a little bit about why that's just not available? Why it's, in your opinion, it might be unlikely to see something like that? Or is that just something we're not seeing right now?
Yeah, well, the market dictates this, right? So if they were in a position where let's just say the debt was even with the amount of equity that they had on the balance sheet. So let's just say they had $70 billion of debt. The market would be much less willing to give them terms on any future transaction. The preferred equity instruments would start trading and reflecting the increased risk associated with it as well. And they would have to start making the decision, do I want to raise debt capital at a 20% interest rate or a 30% interest rate? And that's what the equation would come to. And when you look at this balance sheet right now, they've got $77 billion of capital. The price of Bitcoin would have fallen in half. Let's just say go back down to 60,000. A lot of us would be cheering, would be like, great, I could, get more Bitcoin. And then if you look at the strategy balance sheet, you'd have $35 billion of capital relative to $14 billion of debt. If you're a risk underwriter, you'd take that trade all day, every day. Like that's still a great trade that you could probably get really good rates, or strategy wouldn't get good rates. But if you were a capital deployer and you were looking at offering somebody capital, you'd probably get a great deal at that point in time, as long as you felt comfortable with Bitcoin. And I try to rationalize this in the perspective of a normal human being the other day. Let's just say you've got a person, okay, that wants to buy a house and they need to get a loan. Let's just say they've got $7.7 million of assets and they needed to go get a $60,000 loan. Would you underwrite that loan? Like that, and that's right now, that $60,000 loan is equivalent to their dividend liability annually that MSTR has. The answer is yes, you underwrite that loan. It's a great risk. Okay, let's just say the assets fall in half to $3.5 million and somebody needs a $60,000 loan. Would you underwrite that risk? The answer is absolutely. I would underwrite that risk. And that's what happens in the capital markets to just a larger degree. The scale is just significantly larger. So that's a good way to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit.
Okay, on the subject of MSTR, since I'm getting a devil's advocate tag tonight, you mentioned that money managers often are away from their desk at the beach or doing something more fun than reviewing their equity positions every day at 6 a.m. The sort of counter to that would be, it's not MSTR going down and everything else kind of stagnating. It's actually S&P at all-time highs and everything else being bought except MSTR. What would you say to that point?
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, the stocks are at all-time highs. There is energy coming into the market. There's a lot of that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Do you want to go back to talking about the kick? Sorry.
No. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. And it's there's a lot of speculation in the market, and nothing's really changed, right? Interest rates haven't changed. Everybody's kind of frozen. So like the last 3 or 4 months, there's nothing really changed. So I'm not concerned about that, and I don't think that's like as big of a factor. Like everything's pushing forward, and I think there are still people on the sidelines waiting to understand like what's going to happen in the market. So honestly, I do think the second half of 2025 is going to be a bit more volatile everywhere. And S&P is at all-time highs, but it's probably going to pop significantly higher as there's a little bit more certainty on what the market looks like, what the market structure looks like in the future. Because everybody's paused right now on like interest rates, what's going on with tariffs. And then eventually we get into 26, we're going to start seeing conversations about midterm elections and things like that. There's going to be a lot of rumbling there. So I personally, stocks are at all-time, S&P's at all-time highs, but it's not, drastically different from like a month ago.
Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.